It was 3 months. She went in hospital. They thought she had gastroenteritis, and I was breastfeeding, so she had to come off the breast. And unknown to us, the doctor had a sweat test done, and that was the way that they found out about CF. Yeah. But we didn't know that, and we went to pick her up, thinking we're bringing her home, and then he said no, she's got cystic fibrosis. We'd never heard of it. Sounded horrifying, really, because we didn't know what it was, what it did. You want to see somebody that's in that situation.
So that's actually my next question, is how did you know anything at all? Friends and family?
We didn't know a thing about it. None of the family or anybody had even heard of it. And when they said to us they'd done this sweat test, and the sweat has 4 times as much salt in it as normal, that was how they know that it's cystic fibrosis. Yeah. And many nurses get the babies and they give them a kiss. And they can, it's salt to this baby. And that's the first step in finding, but that didn't happen with Penny. But that happens with a lot of children, a lot of babies.
Well, they'd actually come to do a sweat test on another baby, and Dr. Dixon said, have that one tested. And that's how it happened, that it came.
Right. So how did you feel? How did you feel when Penny was...
Well, you're just numb, really, absolutely numb. And we went to my parents and John's, and of course they were devastated, and you can't take it in straight away, you know, and well, it just seems unreal, as if somebody else, it's happening to somebody else.
Yeah. And she was a normal looking, beautiful baby. And you think, oh, there's nothing wrong with her. It's got all the fingers, got all the toes, everything's perfect. But 4 times the amount of salt in her sweat, that told them enough that she was going to have a very short life, and that was going to be the end of it.
So that sweat test in itself was adequate, just as one diagnostic tool.
Yeah.
That's all the only.
That's exactly what she had.
Yeah.
That's the only diagnostic tool that they had then. They didn't do gene therapy then.
Right. Do they do gene therapy now?
Gene therapy
They've done it
now.
for years, but America stopped doing theirs, didn't they?
Yeah, but you see, gene
That's
therapy
the thing,
is a peculiar thing in that we were always told that you either had cystic fibrosis or you didn't have it. And at these meetings we used to have, where we'd have a speaker and you get a mother standing up and saying, my child is different than this lady's child, and we think that child is worse than my child. Well, why? Are there different strains of it? Oh no, that was the answer. Oh no, it was, you either had it or you didn't have it.
You see, Mark, that was in the book, and their parents, when we met them, they both thought they were different. He wasn't as bad as Penny. But as Penny was a lot better, we said, can we have the salt test again? Just to be sure. This is when they're a bit older. And of course it was confirmed that they had. But Mark was so different to Penny. He didn't have the chest problems and everything that Penny had. You know, so, well, like he's in the book, he's 48 now. So it's just, you know, he couldn't weigh up really that they were so different.
Is this because it's a spectrum disorder like autism, whereby you have to have a certain number of factors on it and then you would be diagnosed, or have you simply got cystic fibrosis but in different degrees of severity?
You've got a gene. Judith has the same gene as I have. That's a cystic fibrosis gene.
And you both need that gene in order for the baby to be...
It doesn't affect us, we're carriers.
Yeah.
If, when we have a baby, I pass on the normal gene to Judith and she picks up with the normal gene, and that child is perfectly normal. If, on the other hand, I pass on the cystic fibrosis gene onto her cystic fibrosis gene, then that child has cystic fibrosis.
So what
But
therefore
there
is the
are two.
probability?
It's a 1 in
Other-
4
Well,
chance.
that is just a 1 in 4.
It's a 1 in 4 chance. There are two other, you know, one of us could have passed it on and the other not. Then it would have been just a carrier like we
See,
were.
Mark's mum and dad had 2 children, fine. Then they had Mark and he had cystic fibrosis.
And they didn't
So they
presumably
didn't
have
know.
other people in their families. Some of the reason why it's a question about family, because with it being a genetic disorder, you'd think that it would show up at
Show
some
up
point
on
in the
everyone.
past.
Yeah.
But
But it
not
doesn't
necessarily.
work
Yeah.
like that.
They perhaps put it down to some other ailment at one time.
Yeah.
See, like Penny went in, they thought it was gastroenteritis. So Penny had the bowel problem as well as her chest. Now some only have the chest, not the bowel. Some have the bowel and not the chest.
But at the time she
So-
was diagnosed with it, it was just a bowel problem. She hadn't
Yeah,
started
that's a
with
baby.
the chest problem then. That came on later. You know, only weeks later, but by October she had a chest problem. You know, we'd found out September that she had cystic fibrosis, but she didn't have a chest problem then.
So, in terms of the physio that you might have had to do, is that only when they have a chest problem diagnosed, or
You
is
do
that
it
with everything?
anyway. They say
Better
do
doing it anyway, you know.
And it is important
Yeah.
because it moves it around. You see, we all have mucus going through our lungs, and the mucus is a cleaning agent. It washes all the bacteria and germs out of your lung and into your bowels, and you pass it on, pass it, you know, away. If, on the other hand, you've got cystic fibrosis, the mucus is sticky and it doesn't flow like it should do. And the cilia, which are the little hairs that the mucus rides on, they can't move it as it should do. So consequently, that child has a build-up of infections that are not being washed out. And that's how it happens, that so many children have infections in the lungs.
So that means basically at many times that she was quite vulnerable.
Well,
Very
from
vulnerable.
September
Yeah.
to December, she nearly died twice in that short time.
What, in her first year?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Just after they'd found this, she nearly died a couple of times. Had to work on her. One night they hadn't even time to ring
That
us
was
or
right.
anything.
One night they said, we should have rung you last night because Penny was so poorly, we nearly lost her. But we were so busy trying to save her
Yeah.
that we didn't have time to ring. And when we did have time to ring, Penny's condition had stabilised. So it wasn't worth ringing.
Sort of on a connected point, my next question relates to, as she was going through good times health-wise, she was growing up, she was becoming more sturdy and strong, you had fewer crises, and she had many interests both indoors and outdoors. So did you struggle more than her friends' parents when it came to letting Penny do her own thing, especially when it came to playing outside
Yeah,
and
we
going
tried
to school?
tried not to do because we didn't
Yeah.
want her feeling any different.
Yeah.
But if she was a bit chesty, then we had to take her to school. Otherwise, she wanted to walk. She wanted to be with her friends
Yeah, of course.
and play out like any other kid. We let her do as much as she could.
Must be very
you
hard to
know.
let go though at first.
At
But
first,
Yeah.
yeah.
when she went to the junior school across the road, they had a sports day, and the children were all had to compete in it, and Penny had to compete in it, and she did the little run that they did, and Penny was last. They did the three-legged race, and Penny was last. Every single thing she did, she was last, because she hadn't the puff to
But
make.
she wanted to do it at the school and
But
said,
she-
"You
I don't know,
can't
she
do
just
it."
laughed.
Yeah, she
Yeah, she
laughed
just
and
laughed.
laughed and laughed. So much so, all the people that were watching, they were laughing as well. And this little girl that was laughing because she was last, eventually, when the prize giving came, they give her a prize for being the happiest little girl.
I'm going to skip a question then, because that
Yeah.
ties in with my next but one question about what do you remember most about Penny. I'm assuming that one of the things is certainly her nature.
There's
'Cause
so
everything
many,
you've said,
so
she
many.
seems such a cheerful person.
She was.
She was just a joy to have,
Yeah.
even when she was ill, because she didn't mourn, she wasn't mourning, she just got on with what she knew she had to do. And we brought her up to knew she had postural drainage and to take her tablets, and it was just part of her life, you know, something she didn't think about after.
So she didn't have any of the kind of standard teenage rebellion?
No,
anything like
no,
No.
she was never naughty. I mean, that was one joy with her. She was never a naughty girl. You know, if we said, no, you mustn't do that, she wouldn't do it. And that was...
But we weren't over strict, you know, it was, I don't know, sort of talking to her and she understood what he said, and that was it, really. You know, and
You see, and she come home from school one day, this was when she was at the secondary school, and she was very, very upset. She was crying. And what's the matter? The other children at school said, I'm going to die. I said, well, we're all going to die. You know, let's talk about this. We're not all going to live forever. We're all going to die. So, what are you on about? Why is Penny the one that's going to die? There are children that will die before her. And we talked her through it and made her realise the real situation. She knew she had this condition and it could shorten her life, but she also knew that we would do everything to help her and protect her to make sure she had as long a life as was possible. And she accepted that, which was wonderful in a girl, and a young girl.
It is. I'm not surprised you called your book Heaven Sent, because that is quite unusual, isn't it? In that
It
sort of
is.
teenage kind
but
of
then
act.
she didn't have, what can I say, she had friends, but they came round.
Yeah.
You know, they used to play games here or wherever they went. So they weren't out like children, perhaps as much now. And piano, she stuck an hour a day with a piano. Things like that. And she just did them. She didn't moan about it, you know.
So she spent a lot of time indoors. She obviously spent a lot of time.
Yeah,
and
she did.
you were a very close threesome. weren't you?
She spent a lot of time indoors at certain times when she was a bit off colour, but when we could, it was out. We went out as much as possible. So, and then after a transplant, we were out. And we went through a period where we were going cycling every day, and I would go to work. I needed to work 8 hours a day. I was self-employed and I needed to work 8 hours a day. So instead of working from 8 in the morning, I went to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. And most people went along with that. They were quite happy, especially if there was nobody in the house. And I did from 6 o'clock in the morning and I worked straight through till 2 in the afternoon. And then I came home, got the carrier out for the bike, put the bikes on the carrier. We had a carrier, well, we still have it, but it's a carrier that carries 4 bikes. So Judith's bike, my bike, Penny's bike, and anybody else that wanted to come with us with room for another bike. This going to Fleetwood every day because it's a marvellous place for cycling. We used to park near the baths at Fleetwood, get onto the front and go along the front. You could go down to South Shore at Blackpool. Or no roads, just straight on the front. Brilliant for somebody that was cycling It was a bit fragile.
Yeah, but also
It strengthened her.
To see her did it good, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, she was quite strong at times
Yeah.
to do this running and cycling. She loved cycling. And of course, Andrew and Penny went a lot, you know.
Probably without cycling and the fact that she did love being outside, she may have been substantially weaker and puny.
Yeah.
So it was all good.
It was good to exercise her, both physically with the legs and that, but also with the lungs.
I think, you know, it is hard not to protect them. You've got to decide that you're not going to wrap them in cotton wool.
Overprotect them.
Because they've got to live this life, haven't they? They've got to go to school, do all the normal things that other kids do. And you want them to keep as normal as they can.
She came home from school one day and she told us this story and I thought it was hilarious. She had a teacher, a lady, and this lady was lecturing to them about something, and Penny was coughing. And she coughed because she couldn't help it, you know. If you need to cough, you cough. So she coughed and coughed, and this lady kept saying, "Be quiet, Penny, shut up." And in the end, he said, "Penny, will you stop coughing?" She said, "It's automatic."
So talking about schools, etc., you seem to have had a great support network, medical, religious, friends, family,
Everywhere.
social.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
it seems inevitable that there must have been lonely and despairing times. How did you deal with those? when they came along?
You mean for us?
For you too?
Yeah, it could
And
be,
for Penny.
yeah. Perhaps more so for John, because women tend to talk more and,
Yeah.
you know, chat a lot, where men don't cover things like that. But, you know, there is lonely times, definitely. And at times it goes through your mind, how long are we going to have her and this sort of thing. When it's a bad time, you don't know what's going to happen from that. But you just have to look forward, really, as much as possible. And live for the moment.
Is that what you found as well, John?
But Judith cottoned on before me that Penny was getting towards the end of her life. It was she was desperately poorly, and I didn't really accept that. I thought, you know, we're okay, I'll keep going. But Judith said, she's getting desperately ill, getting worse. And we had to go to a Monsell to have flu jabs. Penny had always had to have a flu jab. And they believed in the herd process, so that the herd had to have the injections for flu. And I used to pretend that I was frightened of injections, and Penny thought that was really funny. Daddy can't stand the injection. And I did it on purpose, really, because it helped her. And Professor Webb, we went there and Professor Webb said, "Right, Mr. Taylor, I'll take you into the gym and do yours in there, and Mrs. Taylor and Penny will be done by Dr. Bilton in the
Physio.
clinic." And when I went in with him, he said, "How are things?" He said, "Well," I said, "I don't need to tell you really how they are. Things are getting desperate." And
So what point was this? Sorry, this is just before.
Yeah, this is-
this was just before the transplant. I said, "Things
Yeah,
are
we're
getting desperate.
shooting on too quick.
We can, you know, tell that Penny is going downhill fast." And he said, "Well, so long as you know that, and so long as you realise that, you know, there's not a lot now we can do for her." And we came home and Judith and I talked about this, and we talked about having a transplant. And Penny hadn't even twigged on transplants at that stage. We protected her, as it were. But we decided that we should talk about go down the road to transplants. So I think we went to see Professor Webb.
Well, no. First of all, the vicar, Dennis, suggested a transplant.
Yeah.
And then I picked Penny up from school and went to Monsell to see Dr. Webb and the other doctor with him to take Penny for him to tell her.
Well,
I picked her up from school and I talked a load of rubbish all the way about anything and everything because I knew what was going to be said. And she said, well, why don't we have to come from school, question it a bit. And of course that's what he wanted to do.
How did she cope?
Well, she was gobsmacked at first.
well, she wrote that
obviously.
poem. There's a poem in that book.
She says she's happy to have one.
She was happy to have it done, but she wasn't at first. And she was talking to God and
Telling him off.
telling him off and making her go down this road. And then, but she said, I'll accept your decision, sort of thing. And that was it.
Well, talking of acceptance, how did the pair of you two cope when you knew that Penny's end was near?
It's horrible.
Well,
Because you know they're going to kill your daughter and then revive her.
no, that was a transplant.
That
Also,
was-
in that boat, any time, when you actually
Yeah.
felt like she was in a really bad way.
But when
That's a
Big,
strange thing,
big
isn't it?
thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they really did. They took her heart and her lungs out. Well, she's dead at that stage, isn't she? But they've got her onto machines that are keeping her vital organs going, and then they put in the new heart and lung and revive her. Though she wasn't as good as we said at the time, because we'd had an agreement with the Bolton Evening News that whenever this happened, so long as they did as they were told and didn't go, making a big issue of it in the Nationals, we would let them have the information about Penny, because she'd been in the Bolton Evening News
Yeah.
such a long
being
Yeah.
born. Yeah.
and
Yeah, and people
they
reading
agreed
it will
to that.
remember and be really glad to get an update.
They agreed to that, and we sent them photographs and that, and we said Penny's on the way to recovery. Well, at that early stage, they didn't think she was going to make it.
But they had to take her back in, didn't they?
Yeah.
That must have been devastating.
Go inside again.
And we're
Stop the
saying to
bleeding.
everybody, everything's fine, and I sent photographs, and they were on the front page of the Evening News, photographs of Penny in bed with all these tubes and wires in her.
But in a way, to us, she was all right because she was alive.
She was alive, yeah.
She got through it and was alive. So at that stage, she's okay. You've got to go to the next, whatever comes next with that. But she was alive at that stage, so she got through the transplant.
But God moves in mysterious ways. And when we took her down, she was accepting of going into the surgery to have this transplant done. And it's a few hours of the job. They were going to be at it all night. So they said, well, we've got a place where you can have a sleep. Oh, we're not going to sleep, are we? So, we're not worried, we weren't going to sleep. And we went to this room, this porter took us to this room, and there was a couple of single beds in there. And we got on the single beds.
Really?
Yeah.
But we prayed to God, and that night we both felt God. We felt the Spirit, didn't we?
Was there a chapel
In the hospital, yeah.
And
But, I mean,
the-
we felt it that night because we felt that peace, which we didn't expect. We could have felt. And that's why we slept, wasn't it? It was a strange
You
feeling,
kind of
but
passed
we
the
both had
responsibility to God and the medical team.
That's
haven't you,
right,
and the-
yeah.
And the responsibility you've lived with for so long, really. So, is there a piece of advice or assistance that you were given which has stuck with you even to this day? Something really profound or really helpful?
So many.
So many, aren't you? The lucky ones, aren't you?
It's hard to pick one out.
Is it really? Okay. Okay then. On the other side of the coin, what advice would you give parents of a newly diagnosed child? I think that nowadays most would get straight onto the internet to research cystic fibrosis or transplantation or whatever, but you didn't have that option 50 years ago.
No.
So what was it that kept you going?
Well, it was seeing other people as well. And
Other
of course,
people who were suffering from similar...
yeah, there was
Some
some died in the hospital while Penny was in, one little girl did. And we met others, and then we, of course, went to a group,
Yeah.
and you met a lot with the same children.
So the group that you went to, the groups, I'm not sure whether it was
There's a
more than one.
Bolton had a
Bolton
branch of the
branch, yeah.
Cystic Fibrosis
Right.
Trust.
And so was that all about fundraising? Was that about events?
It
that
was
about
mainly
increasing
about
awareness?
men.
No,
Yeah.
it was mainly about fundraising,
Yeah.
but every year they used to have a speaker,
Yeah.
and the speaker was a specialist on transplants, all sorts of things,
Yeah.
but it was all appertaining to cystic fibrosis.
Right.
And we used to go to these, and you learnt a lot really that you never imagined you would learn. I mean, somebody got up at the first meeting that we went to, and they had just done the first heart transplant in Christian Bernard in South Africa. And this lady said, if they can do a heart transplant, could they not do a lung transplant for cystic fibrosis? And this professor, I think he was, said, it's not as easy as it sounds, because you would have to swap, you have to match up the genes, the cells, and the cells of the cystic are different than the cells that are normal. So you would have to get another matching cystic to do the transfer. And he said that would be totally pointless. No point in it at all. And he said the days of having non-cystics transplanted into cystics, he says, you're talking light years. And I remember he went, light years, as though, and then 20 years on they were doing it. That's light years.
Well, they didn't do the lungs though, did they, on their own? The lungs came a bit later.
Yeah, it was heart and lungs they used to do. Take the whole unit out.
And was that because it enabled the lungs to work better?
They work better then.
Yeah.
The thing was, though, that you'd got a good heart that was removed. And Penny's heart went to a little boy,
Yeah, so that's called a
That's
domino
later,
transplant,
yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
and the little boy is still alive.
That's lovely, isn't it?
Isn't it?
It's amazing, yeah. Absolutely amazing. So talking about the transplant, did Penny ever express doubts or worries once she knew that she was on the list? I know that she was very positive and she wanted it to happen, she wanted to have the best quality of life.
The main, not doubt, but the main thing was she wanted just for it to come
Yeah.
and get it done.
So she was basically 100% positive.
She
Let's get it
accepted,
done.
definitely.
So that's
yeah.
completely tying in with all you've told me about her character. So that's nice to know.
I mean, like, she was stronger than us in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
She taught us to be strong,
yeah,
how she reacted to things and how she dealt with
yeah.
things.
And I know what you've told me, Judith, is that her teaching you is part of what helped you cope.
That's right.
Afterwards, when you lost
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
It's amazing. So did you actually assume, when Penny got her diagnosis at, age 0 or whatever, that there might be a cure for the condition by now? And are you
Definitely.
surprised that there is no cure? And what are your views on the new drugs available for sufferers?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when this happened, we thought, give it 10 years and they'll have a cure.
Yeah.
And then, of course,
Sticky mucus.
it's still going on
Sticky
50.
mucus. That, get rid of that in no time.
Well, because it's like blood thinners, you'd think, oh, you can get mucus thinners,
Yeah.
everything will be
That's
okay.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Not
50
like
years
that.
on, there's still not a cure
Yeah.
as such.
So what do the treatments that are currently available actually do for the sufferers? How do they
Well,
Keep them alive.
Yeah, it helps them to breathe, thins the mucus if they have mucus.
So it does thin the mucus.
Yeah.
Right.
You can thin it, but the trouble is, the older the cystics get, the more complicated the disease gets.
Yeah.
Professor Webb told us that the more advanced the person is in age, the more complex their condition starts deteriorating. You know, they get kidney problems and all sorts of things.
Things from drugs and
Right.
over
I
the
see
years.
what you
Due
mean,
to
yeah.
the excess of drugs.
Yeah.
So it's not as if they haven't started off with the capacity to have the kidney problem, but in order to treat one thing,
It
they've
can
weakened
affect
another.
that, yeah.
That's right.
Because one girl when you had heart and lung and a kidney done,
Right.
it's a later stage, isn't she?
Yeah.
And she even had a heart and lung done twice.
So what was the case with Penny? Because I know that it was her lungs that failed, wasn't it?
Mm.
When she'd had the transplant.
Yeah.
Was there any possibility at that point of her having a second transplant?
Well, she would have done if she could,
Which is, they
but
didn't
that
want to.
possibility didn't come anywhere. She
No.
did
Well,
once if she
didn't
could have.
really want to.
If she knew she could.
It must have been a very harrowing experience.
She
that
said
the
it.
whole-
There's a shortage anywhere,
Yeah.
and really we should give somebody else a chance.
Wow.
And that's how she thought.
That's incredible, isn't it? For such a young person as well.
For a
to be so
22-year-old, I
self-sacrificing.
think like that. Yeah.
Mm. So, this is a related question again. Her life was full of creativity, enthusiasm. It all comes across in her letters and poems. This is what she was like in real life, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so she touched
Yeah.
everybody around her, didn't she, with her energy and
Yeah.
whatever. It's great that we can put all of that together,
Mm.
just a little bit, but
Yeah.
a representative example into the book. And I can
Yeah.
see on the mantelpiece behind you, you've got
Mhm.
lots of cards on the mantelpiece. Those are all from people who've read the book and who were
That's
touched,
right. Yeah.
touched
Yeah.
by it. And
Yeah.
that really says, because she touched
Yeah.
the hearts of a lot of people. didn't she?
Definitely.
And
Yeah.
the strange thing was that Professor Webb, we still see him. Judith's being treated with him at the moment.
Yeah.
And when we were there, giving this book to, you know, and he said, "This is wonderful." He said, "I have no records of all these people. All these people that had cystic fibrosis that were my patients." He said, "I have no record." Oh, he says, "Look, there's Steve Large."
Yeah, I remember it.
Steve Large was the surgeon at Patworth that did Penny's transplant. You know, and he was over the moon with it.
It's
I've
excellent.
never read it.
I know.
I can't read it. I find it so emotional. And it's not the bad things. That's not what gets to me.
Yeah.
It's the good times. You know, but we really had some good times of, you know, taking Penny places.
Yeah.
And it's those that get to me. Because I think, well, they're never going to happen again.
She was our future as well,
Of
which
course.
you've lost your future in that sense
Yeah.
that you would have had. But like I said to John, we had 22 years, even though she was there, we had so much joy
Yeah.
and how she dealt with it herself that we were very lucky
Yeah.
She was a
to have
brilliant
had
daughter.
that.
And you still got contacts with lots of friends and family of their friends and
Yeah.
other sufferers. So you still got a link in that sense, as well as
Yeah.
all the obvious links around
Yeah.
it as well. Yeah.
There's just other ones that we've not got links with. You know, she had a friend called Ian,
Yeah.
and Ian has gone living down in Brighton, and we haven't been able to contact Ian. And it's
It was a shame.
It's
He
a
should have been
shame
in the
because
book, you
we
know.
couldn't put him in the book,
Yeah.
and yet he was a major contributor to Penny's
Yeah.
life.
We tried to contact him.
But on the other hand, with one girl that Penny is writing to in the book, she was a good friend, and her mother rang up after reading this book, and she said it's so emotional, really, that my daughter now is in that book.
Yeah.
I said, yeah. And I said, that book is now in the British Library.
Yeah,
So that means your daughter is in the British Library and she'll be there until the British Library collapses and closes down.
So you promised Penny that you'd produce this book.
Well,
we did. Following
Promised
her
we'd try.
You promised you'd try. So now it's 30 years or so later and we've got the book. So how does it feel that you've
Oh, it's
followed your
brilliant.
wishes?
Brilliant.
An achievement. I'm proud of Judith because I honestly could not have done it.
Yeah.
And if I'd not met Leslie at that time, it might have been another thing where it just went on and never got finished.
It was because it was such a massive job. It's not just you were telling somebody's story. You had a massive amount of work behind the scenes, didn't you? Lots of paintings, pictures, drawings, letters, whatever. And you had to make decisions about that, and that meant going through everything, planning through it all.
It was hours and hours of going through everything
But there's more besides.
to read.
I appreciate it must be, yeah.
We have two what they call albums, the photographs, 2 albums of Penny's transplant.
Yeah.
You know, all the way through it, right from the going down and the people that drove us down, because we
They're in the
hadn't,
Yeah,
we hadn't to drive ourselves. Because, and I know why, because when we were going down, I'm sat in the car and I'm thinking, slow down, slow down, I'm not ready for this. But fortunately, the person that was driving, 100 mile an hour, really went fast and got
If you'd
there.
have got pulled over, you would have had a very valid excuse though, wouldn't you?
Well, we would, but whether we'd have been, exempt, I don't think so. Did it boot us? But it was a chance we had to take.
Of course
really.
It was, yeah.
So remind me, how long was the journey? Was it 3 hours?
We did it in 2 hours.
2 hours.
That
So it would have
200
been
miles.
3 and you did it in 2.
If you
just
take
200
it steady,
miles.
it'd say 3 really. But I took a lady down. Her daughter flew down. She wouldn't fly, the mother. So I took her down in, what was it?
2 over 2
hours.
hours.
Just imagine how much
We
easier it
got
would
there before the
The
daughter.
plane hadn't come. Could have took them all down.
think how much easier it would have been if you'd been
At Manchester, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So is there anything else you'd like to share with anybody watching this who might have a child who's awaiting the transplant or who's suffering with a condition like CF?
Don't give up. Always
I
look
think-
on the bright side of life. Yeah, and that's what you have to do.
And I think if they want anyone to talk to, we can help that way, to talk to somebody. Because when Penny died, a lot of people couldn't talk. They felt guilty, I think, that their child was still there when Penny had died.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as easy to talk to the mother. I think Penny at the end was saying, don't go up to the grave every day and morbidly, just get out on your bikes and be happy.
Yeah.
Right. I think
And
Dennis
she
put
practiced
that
what she
in.
preached as well, didn't she?
Yeah,
When she could.
yeah. And she meant that. She didn't want us moping about.
Yeah.
She wanted us to get on with our lives and be happy.
And you quite literally went out on your bikes shortly after Penny's death, didn't you?
Went up to
There's a
St
lovely photo in the book
Andrews.
of the both of you on the beach and
Yeah.
bikes.
Yeah.
That's in the same thing.
That was very hard. It was all right through the day biking, but night times were, just weepy.
Yeah.
You'd have a good weep and then get up the next day and go on your bike. But it was hard.
Yeah.
And it still is hard sometimes. Never goes away. You can have a bad day, can't you? And whatever, but I always think what Penny said, get on with your lives and be happy. And if I'm down a bit, I'll think that, and it helps you to, come on, you've got to get going.
And it's surprising the number of people who have been ill, very ill, and said to us, I've only kept going because of Penny. Penny taught me how to keep going. You know, and it's surprising how many people did that.
How she was. Yeah.
You know, there's one in hospital at the moment, Judith Rangus, and this friend, and she's been in hospital 5 weeks. But she said, you know, it's Penny that keeps me going. Anytime I feel, you know, I don't really want to go down this road, I think, well, Penny would have done. So if Penny would do it, I would do it.
That's an amazing legacy, isn't it?
It is a legacy.
It's an incredible legacy.
So
Something to
we
be
were shocked
proud
how
of.
many people thought about Penny like that, because you just get it on with life and it's, you know, like a normal life. And you don't realise what people are thinking. I mean, there's another poem in there, and you didn't realise that she felt these feelings like that. You don't know what people are thinking, do you?
Not at all.
A feeling like that. But if it helps people, that's great, you know.
But you see, all this stuff was in boxes and all over the
It's
place.
still in boxes.
And
Some of
that
it.
has
And
put it all together. Not all of it,
No.
but to put a lot of it together. And it's wonderful, really, that it's there.
Yeah.
I think another thing is you've got to have faith in doctors.
Yeah.
You know, we've been very lucky. The doctors we've had all through our lives and been able to talk to them like like we're talking with you now. And that helps so much. But you do have to have faith in the doctor. And I think that's half of getting right, you know, getting going, because they've given you that trust that they'll do what they can.
Right. Well, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
It's fantastic. I do appreciate you talking to us.
Well,